Hello, everyone. Welcome to another meeting of the council. I am Lewis, and joining me are my friends Greg, Russ, and Shane. And today we are going to be talking about aesthetics and appearances. And to start things off, I think I'm going to begin with discussing a trip I took last year to Central Europe, and I visited Prague. I visited Slovakia. I saw Vienna for part of a day. And one of the things that I was amazed by, compared to at least most parts of the United States, was just how incredibly beautiful the appearances of the buildings were when compared to many parts of the States. And you could see there was a lot of craftsmanship and love that went into building these incredible edifices. Like Prague, for instance, you could walk around a corner and see a vista that could have been out of a fairy tale. And I juxtapose that with, well, my worst experience in the aesthetics and appearances of a US city was a small place close to Albuquerque. And it wasn't like terrible as in run down, but it was absolutely soulless. Everything was basically the same chain stores. There was no real beauty or inspiration in the architecture. It was literally everything existed just to function and nothing else. And I think that speaks towards a major problem with modern society, and we can also discuss basically how aesthetics have changed over the past century, because it has affected so many areas of our lives that we may not think about, but we are affected by them every time we open our eyes and look at things. And one hypothesis that I heard was that after the collective trauma of World War I, things really started changing, and you have increase in brutalist styles and minimalist styles and other architectural styles that are really kind of, for lack of a better word, ugly and highly utilitarian. And even though that process started 100 years ago, it seems to have progressed. There's been a progressive war on beauty and aesthetics. And now, in so many places, you walk out and you see not only the buildings are ugly, but the people are incredibly unkempt. It was not acceptable or normal 20 years ago to walk around in sweatpants and pajamas all day. Even if you were going to a store, you were expected to look at least decent. And then if you go back 60, 70 years or more, people would wear their fine clothes, and they'd want to look as good as possible when they went out. And it is unfortunate to see how the decline in appearances has kind of mirrored in a lot of ways decline of civilizational vigor. And with that, I'm going to throw this ball to Russ.
Okay. I am not, I was thinking on the topic before this and thinking about how broad appearances as a topic can be. It can be from the scale, perhaps I think of it as, in this order, something like self-appearances, then perhaps group appearances, society, think about nations, and then I suppose there's different subgroups, right? And so you have both the physical aspect of that, but then also the metaphysical. So the metaphysical is kind of the masks that we wear. Um, Masks, when you say that, a lot of times it almost seems like it implies deception in a bad way. But I think there's something that happened 2 dozen years ago where people started saying, you're not being your authentic self if you go out in public and you're wearing a mask. They would say that you're fake. However, for most of time, I think it was understood that wearing a mask in public was the cultural and proper thing to do. In fact, it was the expectation. That's why they would wear wigs, and men would wear makeup more as well. And you would dress up and wear your, finest, clothes, and it took a lot longer to get ready. And going out was often a more of a delicacy rather than a daily occurrence. And I think this happened for in different cultures for long many centuries. My point is that it wasn't you're a fake type of person, right? The expectation was that the metaphysical layer, that you were wearing a certain mask whenever you stepped out, and it wasn't pejorative. And of course, you were wearing literal masks and clothes and things. So, appearance, when I think of appearance, I'm thinking about those two layers and what how we can use those to our advantage. I think, but this is a very large topic, and I only have 5 minutes here, so I have to keep things really narrowed in. And so I'm going to speak a little bit too, and this is kind of funny thing to bring up, but again, we can go on any of these aspects with regard to appearance. But what really grinds my gears is what has happened with appearances and this intrinsic selfhood. The appearance, since the modern culture has gone the way of, oh, you're being fake, right? Well, it's also gone the way of then subsuming the appearance with the person themselves. So by taking away that layer of expectation, by what almost sounds noble to begin with, right? Be your authentic self in public. Well, I think that layer kind of exists for a reason. And without it, again, the a certain fusing occurs where people start to value themselves and others based off of these appearances, which were once a buffer layer between the ego of the self and the outside world. It was a shield. But now that shield has become this intrinsic thing. And so what are people doing? Hurting themselves in the most basic terms, right? I mean, we can go into all the details, but hurting themselves across a wide range of methods, from everything from trying to well, it's all rooted at, oh, my appearance is bad, therefore I am bad. Interestingly, there's also something happening here with the intellect as well. Oh, my thoughts are bad, I am bad. Um, there's this layer that has been removed, and because of it, you have everything from bulimia to self-worth problems to body dysmorphia to dietary strangeness to surgeries that people surgeries that are taking place, or minor cosmetic changes that like injection, face injections and butt, all this stuff. I mean, I can sit here and I can say, oh, that is an abomination and looks terrible to me. I don't understand why anybody would do that to themselves, right? But it doesn't. My opinion doesn't matter. Um, there are people that do like that, and there always will be people that like things that look weird to other people. But what matters to me is the fact that people are feel that it's necessary to change that part of themselves, which really wasn't supposed to matter that much. It was supposed to be your appearance was supposed to be something that you could don or discard. And then the real you, the you that only your family knew, right? That was the you that whenever you came back from town, came back from the city, you take off your wig, you stop speaking in your most proper accent, right? Whatever high version of language that you're using around people rather than uh, your guttural family vernacular. So I thought that was something, to kind of hone in on with regard to appearances, since it's such a broad subject and there's so much one could say about all that. I think I just wanted to, I don't know, make mention of whatever's happening there and the reason that it's happening. And I think it's that fusion, that false selfhood people are attributing to their looks, both physically, their beards and their hair that they haven't gotten fixed, and metaphysically, which is to say, um, how they sound, the person that they want to appear to be in the mind's eye of those that witness them, and the need to control that. Uh, so that's all I have to say on that. I hope that was enjoyable. Let's see. Time to pass it on to Shane Shanerson.
Alrighty, let me get this going. I took this a slightly different way. I guess everyone's going to interpret a broad topic like this really differently, but I basically just scraped together a whole lot of memories and anecdotes about how I saw my own appearance over time through my life. And I think this is a really fun topic, and following on from what Russ was saying, there's this interplay between how you see yourself and how others see you, and then how you like get a sense of how other people see you to change how you see yourself. So there's this weird feedback loop. And I think what's happening today that's kind of toxic is that we're getting that feedback from information from corporations rather than people that we actually care about. That mechanism that we use to get an assessment of our own appearance has been commercialized and parasitized by nefarious players, and the actual people we're trying to impress are out of the loop. So I think that's where a lot of the madness has come in, excessively cultivating our appearances. But so yeah, getting back to me. This is all about me. Um, I have two really early memories. One is my mother looking at baby photos and saying, "Oh, he used to be such a cute baby. What happened?" And looking back, obviously that was a joke, but as a little autistic kid, I took that literally. It's like my mother is saying that I'm hideous now. And my horrible older sister, I have a vivid memory of her putting her face right up to me and snarling, "You are so fucking ugly," and taking that on board as well. Um, and as a kid, I had a weird thing that I refused to wear branded clothing. Like there'd be like, shirts and sweats and all those kind of things with like, logos and brands. And I absolutely refused to wear them. I don't know where that came from, but it's a rare example of me being outwardly concerned about my appearance. Because usually it was something I kind of avoided engaging in. But yeah, I was self-conscious as a really painfully thin, awkward little kid, and I still am. Like I've never grown out of that. Uh, Probably my most self-conscious moment was in high school. I had really bad acne, and our high school uniform was this paper-thin white shirt that I regularly used to bleed through. So for a few years there, I'd wear my really thick winter jumper in the middle of summer to like cover it up. So that's probably like the low point of that understanding of my appearance. But I've always had a really ambiguous relationship to my looks and my appearance. I think previously I said I grew my hair really long in grade 9 and then shaved it all off in grade 10. And in university, I played around with a bunch of deliberately weird and ugly hairstyles because, it was easy to just shave it all off again. But I had like blue racing stripes at one point, and I think the worst, I'd shaved it down the middle and had a row of red pigtails on either side, like just bizarre monkey inspired kind of hairdos. But it reminds me a bit of Diogenes in his barrel, as like if you see someone wearing a barrel, you don't think, oh, they're a poor person and they can't do any better. Like they're struggling and they want to look, they want to wear fine clothing, but they can't afford it. They're in these like degraded, shabby clothes. If you're wearing a barrel, it's deliberate. This guy is consciously choosing to do something ridiculous to make a point. And I think we have that flexibility when it comes to appearance. You can get stuck in this struggle station in between, or you can just completely thumb your nose at the conventional expectations and do something really different. Another thing, my hair started receding in my late 20s, and I was really, really grateful I never needed another professional haircut. I hate haircuts. Sitting in front of a mirror for like 20 minutes, staring at yourself with some stranger that you don't know poking at your head. I, I think that's probably the most self-conscious I've ever felt in my life. And to not have to do that ever again, just got a shaver and would cut my own hair whenever it got a bit woolly. Um, Another thing around this, I started dating in. Oh no, I missed a story. I missed a story. Where did it go? Nope. Uh, yeah, I started dating in my 20s. And before that, I became friends briefly with like the most attractive guy I've ever met, like just ridiculously, painfully beautiful. And I'm pretty sure he was straight and like there was nothing going on. So it was this prolonged torment. Um, but I sat in that pain long enough to realize that good-looking people are good for looking at and not necessarily anything else. So, like, when you see a beautiful person, just enjoy it and don't feel any urge to hang on to it. Just let them drift through your life and wait for the next beautiful person to turn up. It's not something that's necessarily worth possessing. Either yourself, if you happen to be extremely beautiful, it often comes with a lot of downsides. And for people in your life, just recognize it and let it go when it goes. Um, so when I started dating in my 20s, I briefly became kind of paranoid and fussy about my looks, thinking that you could change something that would like make the whole thing be less awkward. And I generally liked how I looked, but there's a Bart Simpson quote where he says he's more striking than lovely. And I'm like, I kind of like, yeah, I have a distinct look. I'm not going to like transform it dramatically. I just have to work with what I've got. I started going to the gym to like be less skeletal. I got stronger, but I actually got skinnier. So that didn't exactly work, but it was nice. That was a nice side effect. And against my dentist's recommendation, I whitened my teeth once and it damaged the enamel. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to stop fussing. That was the one regret. At least it wasn't like a set of breast implants or something that went wrong. Um, and all of this process of dating other people through my 20s reminded me, it made me realize how limiting conventional beauty is, that it's much more interesting to figure out what you think of someone else, including their appearance, which is just an aspect of things. And I applied that same standard to myself and others and just kept moving forward. And another thing that's really useful for younger people, there's a huge difference between what people find beautiful and what they find sexy. And they can often be like diametrically opposed to each other. And I actually think the people who have it best in life are the ones that are really sexy but ugly. That's the sweet spot. If you can find yourself in that state in life, it's a really powerful position to be in. You've got the best of both worlds. And to wrap up, I've got 3 points of advice. One is that males are at their least attractive in their early teens. They're like they're usually painful to look at. There's things are moving in all sorts of weird directions, and it's like continental drift. Like things are on their way to other destinations, and you just have to get through it. But the upside is that you won't but for most men, you won't be that ugly again until you're in old age. Unlike women that usually peak in like their mid to late teens, and then it's a steady downhill slide for the rest of their life. So yeah, if you're a young man who's really paranoid about the way you look, you're on a completely different trajectory, and the best is probably ahead of you if you play your cards right. Um, Another thing, just philosophically, that language artificially drives people to seek certainty, like I am handsome, I am ugly, I'm a 7 out of 10. But beauty is really deeply subjective and ambiguous. You can't nail it down. It's not one thing. And it's probably the least important filter to evaluate people in your life. And worthwhile people will come to the same conclusion. So yeah, don't treat it too significantly. And I'd also, final bit of advice is to focus on three forms of vitality, which are foundational to beauty, which can be more manipulated or manufactured in today's age. So bodily vitality. So if you sort out your sleep and your diet, it will make you more attractive as a byproduct rather than the point of the exercise. And particularly when you're younger, if you have an opportunity to chew on hard food, it will change the development of your face. It'll improve your dental alignment and your breathing. And yeah, that you have a window of higher flexibility in your teens. So look into that. But you can do it at later stages in your life too, but you need to be more dedicated. Mental vitality, if you're interested in the world and especially learning to be interested in other people, is a superpower. And finally, emotional vitality. If you can develop the capacity to metabolize good and bad feelings and process those situations, that makes you vastly more attractive to other people as well, regardless of, which side of your face your nose happens to be on. Um, so yeah, that's kind of my take on it all. And I will throw over to Gregory.
Greetings and salutations. I approach appearance with the person's correlation to society and vice versa, with social judgments too. With my appearance through my life, I was baptized Catholic, and I reflected the aesthetics, culture, and morals of a Catholic boy being an altar server, confirmed in the church, First Communion, First Reconciliation, and that slowly deviated me from the church at age 15 once I was introduced to literature. Leo Tolstoy was the first great author I read. To be specific, it wasn't War and Peace or Anna Karenina. It was The Death of Ivan Ilyich that I read, and other stories too, with Leo Tolstoy. But amid that transition from being Catholic to non-Catholic, it was the childhood appearances of wearing khakis, having short hair, being clean shaved, because I was raised in an older generation of family members. My father, 73, my uncle, 76, being motherless, and thus I was influenced with people 30 to 40 to 50 years older than me, including being disassociated and emotionally detached from, well, children of my age. So I began watching cartoons, trading Pokemon cards, Beyblades, etc., to appeal and to a degree have that attention of appealment and satisfaction. AKA, I wanted to be accepted at a young age while having the mind of an elderly man. So once I began being influenced in music from two separate generations, my dad and my siblings' generation, that affected my appearance. Long hair to the shoulders, mustache. I began growing my mustache at age 15 again, and then it evolved to a goatee, and then it evolved to a mustache again, and now this is the second time with a beard. And I shaved off the Robert Plant, who's the singer of Led Zeppelin, style of hair at age 19, December of 2023, because I was working at a greenhouse job. There was a rash and inflammation on my neck from my long hair. The humidity inside the greenhouse was double, if not triple, depending on the Georgia weather day. And once I began reading philosophy, psychology at age 17, and I continue to say that age 17 is the climax of my life, that affected my appearance too, where I stopped wearing a, Catholic appearances as if I'm attending a church, and then began wearing classic and, well, not classical clothing, but lax and ordinary appearance. Just jean jacket, shirt with a pocket on the left side, on the left pec, shorts, khaki shorts, or sandals. Which at the time I didn't recognize I was being near and down to earth, being attached to the earth and nature itself and early worship. But with my appearance evolving now with shorter hair, a beard, people would say, "Oh, what's your next appearance?" I'd respond with, "Well, it's the appearance of myself. I'm not mimicking or duplicating some person's appearance. This beard is experimentation. This hair is experimentation." Well, recently, the haircut I favor is from the TV show Peaky Blinders, which is a 1920s and 30s style of a haircut. And people say, "Oh, you have a Peaky Blinders haircut." I said, "Yes," and you comprehend why. "Oh, because you just like the style." No, it was a style that they used in the 20s and 30s to prevent lice. So it's both beneficial and culturally appealing. But speaking of culturally appealing, in history, appearances were crucial and prevalent in politics and religion. And, and in politics, there was a series with the United States presidents that were born from Ohio, Civil War generals and slash veterans, and had beards, from Ulysses S. Grant to Chester Arthur. And then in between that phase was Grover Cleveland, and then Benjamin Harrison from Ohio, Civil War veteran, beard. Then it stopped with McKinley because he was the final one in the Civil War with no beard, but from Ohio. And then there's the religious appearance. Muslims adore distinguishing themselves with Middle Eastern clothing, beard, and not a Yamaha and a kufi on their head, similar to a yarmulke, but they tuck in their hair inside the kufi. Including, there's an example from ancient history. Greek women, when they stared at the physique of a man, they said to themselves, "He must have a healthy mind. He must have a high, noble, and qualitative mind. I can reproduce with him because I know he has that." And that's a form of appearance and aesthetic that is depleting, if not obsolete today, in my mind, from staring at the appearance and thinking, how healthy or unhealthy is their philosophy, is their emotions, morality, and their character? That's everything I have to say.
I think you're hosting, Lewis, so you want to take charge and call other people out?
Yes. So thank you all for giving your opinions on this matter. It's funny because I started out with the kind of large scale aesthetics of a civilization, and it kind of went, I think, deeper and deeper into the individual views of appearances. And I'm just wondering, and here's an open question or discussion. How do you guys think that the decline in physical appearance acceptance over the past few decades is related to our civilizational fate?
I guess I can start by reiterating what I think is a really important point, that how we choose to present ourselves and how we evaluate how successful we are in achieving those goals used to be a conversation between the individual and their immediate community, that the people around you would give you feedback about whether your appearance is acceptable or exceptional or, it needs some changes. And we've given up that socially mediated uh, optimization of appearance for the commercial equivalent. Now we have like ads on TV telling you that your teeth aren't wide enough, buy this product. You're too fat, buy this product. Here's the latest fashion, go and buy it. And if you don't, then you're failing as a human being to present yourself in the best possible light, and people are going to hate you. So yeah, giving that power up to corporations, I think, was one of the most destructive things that we've done for individual and collective psychology in the West. We've had what 75 years now of being like constantly taught to be dissatisfied with our own appearance, but in a way that's never fully actually satisfied. There is no end to the process. As soon as you buy one product, there's 10 more that you have to go out and get because it's an insatiable profit-driven motive behind it rather than actually caring about the end result.
I'll add to you, Shane, of as an individual with tattoos on both his right and left side of his body, tattoos were symbolic of that is an evil man. He can hurt you. He can possess the power of doing violence. Hell's Angels and the west side of the United States, and then associated with the Purple Gang, mafias. If you had a specific tattoo on your wrist or on your neck or on your body, you were associated with a cult or a violent group. And now tattoos have evolved to miscellaneous and dullness. I have tattoos to value both the Greek influence in my life from literature and mythology, and the left side of my body is respect and honoring my ancestors and future ancestors with the Irish slash Celtic history.
Hey, I've got a fun question for people. If you could radically transform your appearance, even in ways that may not be like technically possible today, what would you do? And I guess I'll start out. Um, I'd never get a tattoo, but if I could change the color of my entire skin to something bizarre, like probably blue, being blue would be really cool. But yeah, it would have to be like low, no risk and no cost and effortless. But even if it was irreversible, I think it'd be like, yeah, press that button, hit me with the blue laser.
Murph Shane.
Exactly.
I'm blue, da ba dee da da da. But yeah, I think blue's the worst, not the best color to choose. But yeah, I'm critical of that choice. But I've always wondered if for a day I really want to. It's not that I want to know because I can figure it out decently. The female experience, right? Like, but what I want to do is basically, so I would take the feminine appearance, and I want to go out and I want to mess with guys mostly to test their psychology because there's things that like girls would never do, right? But I think if a girl did that, I'm like, wow, yeah, if she did that, he would definitely do that. So I would want to like, it's funny, but I would want to like test male psychology, given like extreme, um, uh, just like doing things that a regular female wouldn't do just because they would never expect it, and then to see how they would respond and whether or not I can predict that. I think testing that like behavior would be very fun. And it's something that I can't test, right? Like myself, like
Mm.
I can run a lot of tests on different things. I can do that sort of thing all the time, and I do. Is act like different. See how people respond if I test certain stimulus, but I can't do, I can only do it from within this boy body here.
Mental note, if Russ ever buys like a highly realistic sex bot, female sex bot, it'll be like, no, it's for experimental purposes. I'm doing research.
Oh, yeah, I would definitely. That's just as good if I could just. But I need to be. I need to have like a good heads up display,
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah. You'd
VR.
yeah, you'd VR pilot it and then take it out to the bar and start
Yeah,
giving guys weird philosophical questions and then
yeah,
recording the data.
yeah. Because I'm curious. What I'm really
Funny,
curious would be
sex.
like how far can I push it? Like if the girl's attractive, how weird can I be? And
Mm.
the guys still go along with it, right? Like that would be really weird. Wouldn't that be fun to watch? I would love seeing that, right? Like just keep increasing the weird level, just to see like when different guys like finally drop off. But you need like a 10 of 10, right? Like you need like a super
Yeah.
big, right? And then it'd be funny because you could say things like, "That's not weird, is it?" And I want to see them like, "Oh, of course not."
So, I'm glad, Shane, you brought up sex bots because the new robots that are coming out, they're definitely in uncanny valley territory, and that's regardless of what they're used for. It could be just, a demonstration of a face, and it's like it looks so for those who aren't familiar, the uncanny valley is basically when something doesn't look like a human face very much, but it has like eyes and a mouth. It's cute. And then when something is realistic, it's also good. But then at a point between those two areas, you get to a place where something is kind of human, but not really human. And human, we tend to think of this as like, oh, something's wrong and something's off.
Mm.
So I'm just wondering, do you guys think that the uncanny valley effect will prevent those kinds of models from going into effect, or are people just going to be so desperate for robot robot friends that they're going to completely ignore the weirding out factor?
Well, you have to factor in that human women are already plunging themselves into the uncanny valley with plastic surgery. And that doesn't seem to diminish their success rate all that much.
Yeah, well, I mean, Botox, oh my God, I do not understand the appeal of Botox for non-medical uses. I mean, the people who take it is absolutely uncanny valley, and I bet outside of like Hollywood and extremely shallow locations, I mean, how many people would actually like that aesthetic?
Here's a related question. Is AI generated art and like it's becoming more and more sophisticated, is it going to crash the market value of beauty to zero? Like if you can put on filters and see as many beautiful images of as many like people who don't exist as possible, does that diminish the real life value of people who just have naturally beautiful faces and bodies, or is it going to be more complex than that? Is it actually going to put a premium on the real thing?
My answer is yes. From how humanized the instincts have become and denaturalized they've become too, which is why I advocate for naturalization of man and dehumanization of nature, where these artificial sex robots, art, music, and now philosophy and religion are entering the page in this artificial form, where nature is generating in this modern man a weaker stimulus to satisfy, to be joyful. and to have a sense of value and not see that this life that well to see that to value life as the preparation or proprietor for or preparator for death. So now with the creation and the creativity of AI and artificial or just AI itself, people are competing for what is the higher stimulation, what is the higher the pleasure that we can seek. That is still simple, but at the same time we can value it. But then they stand in this relational competition to where they can't relate to themselves, they can't relate to the art, can't relate to others. So what are they standing for? They're standing for nothing. They've deprived themselves of how valuable fate is. And once they seek this road, if not course, of where the river stops producing its flow and it can no longer think and reverse its standards, the standards have become nothing, if not egalitarian, in a state of nihilism, one can say.
Hmm.
That's my answer.
Hey, following on from that, here's my hot theory I just realized. So
Yeah.
what if we've already passed the saturation point for beauty in like its narrowest form of like there's just this very simple ideal. It's become so abundant that it actually doesn't stand out anymore, particularly in media circles. So
Mhm.
celebrities that get bad plastic surgery, what if they're actually doing it deliberately? Because having a distinct and weird face is actually more attention grabbing than just being beautiful these days. Like if you later in your career and you started out as, another fresh, beautiful face for like 5 seconds, it's actually beneficial to your career as a celebrity to go through a process of becoming ever more bizarre looking because that makes you recognizable and unique and attention grabbing. And that's ultimately what this game of fame and celebrity is about. It's not actually about pleasing the eye because the abundance of faces that please the eye is off the charts these days. There's no, it's not difficult to find a pleasant face to look at, but a weird face, particularly with a story that goes along with, your tragic and dramatic life. That's the role that they're actually playing. What do you think
Hmm.
about that
A,
crackpot theory?
a recent example is the recent appearance of Jim Carrey. He's
Oh, yeah.
naturally naturally he can modify and morph his face. One example, The Grinch,
Mm.
and his recent movies with in association with Sega or Sonic movies. But in the recent appearance, he appears plastic and unhealthy
Mm.
with that obsession of wide white eyes. If you saw with people with Botox and artificial implants, of it's just those wide white eyes. That's to me, that's the first sign of something's incorrect with this person. But Jim Carrey being a satirical and actor to heart, your hypothesis, I'd say it's true that he he's obliged to act in the role as a Hollywood celebrity, and then he'll extract all that plastic and Botox effects from him, which
Mm.
is one, severe damage to his body, and two, to his reputation, if not his finance, and with friends too.
Well, that reminds me of a point that Russ was talking about, which I thought was really interesting, that there used to be a culture of having particular appearance masks in particular scenarios in society, and that you had the freedom to take those masks off at other times that I think was really healthy. Whereas those barriers, those boundaries, those traditions seem to have been really dispersed today. Like you can get it's easier to get a facelift than it is to like no, like you can get a facelift and then go out in your pajamas. That's the norm. But the idea of like just putting your makeup on your nice clothes to go out and then going in your pajamas when you get home, that distinction has broken down. Yeah, it's weird.
They continue with, and I'll be the final to say this before I hand this to another person to speak of.
Mm.
To continue that part, there's an example in my head of the United Kingdom's issue from the Victoria era till the 1940s of prostitution. And it's this dualistic occupation of wearing a mask. And we're appealing to other men and women in the streets, if not in brothels and political homes, then behind the scenes, we're we're generating money to survive on the number of children we've produced, the miniature lodges, and how unhealthy the environment has become because of industrialization, liberalization, and capital and economic affair. Another example I thought of this was Jack the Ripper, not solely of murdering the prostitutes, but of, is he wearing a mask or is he being authentic? Which is tying to the higher truth of this episode of appearance and aesthetics.
Is technology giving us new forms of masks to play around with? Like, think of all of the girls putting photos with face filters on their Instagram. Like, or now it's even got to the point you can have like live video that puts a face filter on you. Uh, I wonder if that's,
I'd like to
yeah.
I'd like to that question because in addition to the masks, I do not really follow the online world too much, but apparently like there's this movement called looks maxing, where people are trying to maximize their facial structure and their looks, and it seems as though that in and of itself is a mask and an extremely unhealthy one because it takes something that should be decent, looking all right, and then taking it to an absolute extreme. So, do you guys have any thoughts on that in addition to what Shane asked about more masking options?
I mean, I'll quickly jump in. The looks maxing is interesting. I mean, it's worth pointing out that the kind of spearhead of that movement, the clavicular guy, has some interesting support behind him. That his meteoric kind of rise to prominence is probably not completely organic. Um, but yeah, the idea that your face is malleable in a way that you can uh, take into your own hands. It's really interesting. Like I even mentioned it briefly, like the way your jaw develops isn't just your genes, it's based on how you use it. And a lot of people in the West eat such soft food that their jaw is never stimulated to fully develop, which can cause all sorts of health issues later in life. Uh, like Clavicular is taking it to the next level. Like he's applying microfractures to his cheekbones to stimulate them to grow. And it's interesting because like the alternative to that would be getting like Jim Carrey did. He got face implants to make his cheeks look more prominent. And that was hideous. So in some ways I'm like I'm a little bit I have a bit of admiration for the DIY, like hands-on cultivating your own skeleton to grow the way you want it to. I mean, we're also facing an unfolding situation of like amateur biotechnology that you can, inject yourself with steroids and peptides and all sorts of things of dubious effectiveness. And I guess this links into like Brian Johnson with his attempt at reversing and preventing aging through all sorts of biochemical interventions. So yeah, we're at a weird time where we've been given tools to change either our biological selves or our digital appearances on all sorts of different levels. It's a kind of Cambrian explosion of tinkering. But if your motivation for doing it isn't grounded in healthy psychology, then all of the tools in the world are only going to lead you to disaster in more interesting and faster ways. Wait,
Specifically, too, of how this people associate my generation is being affected with the social judgments and the multiple mask wearing per day, and with the recent explosion of health community and working out. I began working out May 4th, which is Star Wars Day, May 4th, 3 years ago. And my appearance drastically evolved with two different programs, the push pull leg, and now I'm using Mike Mentzer's high intensity training program that tripled my strength. But nevertheless, this generation is what Kierkegaard labeled as finite despair and reflective tension. The finite despair of how innocent and beautified social media is appearing as, and people's immediate inclination is, so that beauty I can go for. And so the social media platform is a form of beauty and not this. And when other people attempt to replicate that beauty, there's this inner sense of envy. So they're accepted, but why can't I not be accepted? Then the paradox of that envy is, from my self-worth, I will elevate my status to their same status by using cunning, deceptive, black arts of politics, and vengeful tactics to gain the power, acceptance, and be at a state of comfort, of security. And preach, oh, I'm altruistic, I'm compassionate, I'm also selfless, and I want to help you. In reality, you're not. You're not assisting yourself or other people, and you're in this bird cage that's unlocked, and the gate is wide open for you to leave, but you decide to continue shackle the weight on yourself inside the bird cage and not be a free spirit.
I guess this comes from an old, very ancient instinct in humans that we desperately want the approval and acceptance of others and it used to be for our basic safety that you needed to calibrate yourself to fit into your immediate social group. Otherwise, you'd risk being exiled, and which was basically a death sentence for most of human history. But now we live in this digital sphere, and we try and apply the same instincts to it, but it doesn't work. Like the admiration of millions of followers on your YouTube or Instagram channel doesn't actually mean anything, but it triggers that feeling of security that you have the approval of a large number of your fellow humans, and that's kind of like money in the bank. But it's nothing today. It's like maybe a crappy advertising deal that you can slap on the end of your content, which will make you a few dollars, but it isn't actual security. It's an illusion. In the simplest form of the word, it's an instinct that's been misapplied to a new situation that leads people to do crazy things to themselves in the pursuit of what is ultimately nothing.
Good points. Good points. I think we're about out of time here.
Mm.
But I don't know if that left anybody with any good sense of our next topic. But there's a lot of different ways that this one was certainly interpreted. So I look forward to expanding on all of those with you guys here. Here, live as well as in person. So, yeah, I think that about wraps it up. Lewis, what you got anything for us here at the end?
Well, guys, thank you for participating. I think this was a very fascinating discussion. It was great seeing everyone's perspectives and how it relates to each other and the modern world. And hopefully the viewers also got a lot out of it. So as always, like, comment, subscribe, be respectful, and we'll see you next time. So Amor Fati.
Amor fati.
Amor fati.